Roy Hibbert looks worse than Kwame Brown. Psychologically. Now, I don't know what it is, but Lord.
Roy Denzel Hibbert, born December 11th, 1986. Roy Hibbert's career didn't fall apart the way people like to remember it. For a stretch, he was exactly what the league needed: a massive rim protector, the backbone of an elite defense, and a centerpiece on a team that really believed in him. But basketball didn't stay the same. The rules changed, the spacing changed, the way big men were valued changed, and once that shift happened, Hibbert's strengths became limitations almost overnight. His decline wasn't loud or dramatic, it was sudden, confusing, and perfectly timed, with the league moving in a completely different direction. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Roy Hibbert is a 7-foot center from Jamaica who came up at Georgetown during an era when size and rim protection still mattered. Playing under John Thompson III, Hibbert became the anchor of Georgetown's defense, helping lead the program to multiple tournament appearances and a Final Four in 2007. He wasn't flashy, but he was effective, a true back-to-the-basket big with discipline, patience, and an understanding of team defense. By the time he entered the NBA draft, Hibbert was viewed as a safe pick for teams looking for structure and interior presence. The Indiana Pacers selected him in 2008, and his development followed a steady upward path. Year by year, Hibbert improved, eventually becoming one of the league's perimeter defensive centers. By the early 2010s, he was an all-star, a key piece of Indiana's identity, and a central figure in deep playoff runs that went head-to-head with LeBron James's Miami Heat. Concepts like verticality made him invaluable on defense, but as the league began shifting towards speed, spacing, and perimeter play, the foundation of Hibbert's value was heading toward a collision with what the NBA would soon prioritize most. Stunt number 1, the NBA changed the rules on him. Roy Hibbert's decline makes a lot more sense once you understand how perfectly his prime lined up with how the league defended the paint at the time and how quickly that disappeared. For a few years, Hibbert wasn't just effective, he was essential. Indiana built its entire defensive identity around him. He played deep drop coverage, protected the rim without fouling, and mastered the concept of verticality. That skill alone turned him into one of the most impactful defensive centers in basketball. Then the NBA changed. Freedom of movement rules, tighter enforcement on contact, and a greater emphasis on perimeter spacing started reshaping how the game was played. Suddenly, Hibbert's greatest advantage, being planted near the basket, became something opponents actively avoided. Guards stopped challenging him head-on and instead pulled him into space. Stretch bigs dragged him away from the rim, and pick and rolls forced him into decisions that didn't suit his skill set. The problem wasn't effort or awareness, it was fit. Hibbert was built for a version of basketball that no longer existed. Defenses were no longer allowed to load the paint the same way. Verticality became harder to execute when drives were protected more and shooters were spaced further out. What once made him elite turned into a liability as the margins changed. Offensively, the shift hurt him as well. As the league spread out, centers were expected to either stretch the floor or keep pace in transition. Hibbert wasn't that kind of player. He played slow, methodical basketball, relying on positioning and timing rather than speed or shooting. When possession sped up, his impact shrank. What made the transition especially hard was how fast it happened. Hibbert didn't gradually fade, he was overtaken by a structural change he had no time to adjust to. Coaches didn't lose trust in him, the game simply asked for something different. His growth didn't stall because he regressed, it stalled because the NBA moved the goalpost almost overnight, and Hibbert was standing in the wrong place when it did. Stunt number 2, confidence didn't survive the exposure. Once the league figured out how to play Roy Hibbert, the biggest change wasn't physical, it was mental. For a center whose game relied on precision, timing, and discipline, confidence mattered more than athleticism. And once opponents started targeting him possession after possession, that confidence eroded fast. Pick and rolls were no longer occasional challenges, they became the entire game plan. Guards hunted him, teams spaced him out, and every possession forced him into uncomfortable decisions. That exposure didn't just affect how he was defended, it changed how he played. Hesitation crept in. He was a step slower rotating, less decisive contesting shots, and more tentative finishing around the rim. The things he once did instinctively started looking calculated, and in the NBA, hesitation is deadly. When a player has to think instead of react, everything feels late. What made matters worse is that Hibbert couldn't counter this shift with versatility. He wasn't suddenly gonna become a floor spacer or quick switch defender. His value had always been built on being in the right place, doing the right thing, and anchoring structure. Once structure collapsed, there was no fallback version of his game to lean on. Confidence is fragile in professional basketball, especially for big men whose mistakes are impossible to hide. Guards can recover, wings can blend in, and centers are always in the picture. Every blown coverage, every late rotation was amplified, and over time it wore on him. Minutes became inconsistent, roles shifted, and the margin for error disappeared. Less confidence led to less aggression led to less effectiveness, and less effectiveness led to fewer opportunities to rebuild trust. Hibbert didn't stop caring, but the version of the game that once rewarded his calm, composed style now punished it heavily. Once that cycle starts, it's hard to reverse. At that point, the conversation around a player changes from how do we use him to can we survive these minutes? And when a career reaches that stage, the fall isn't loud, it's quiet, steady, and undeniable. Stunt number 3, his role shrunk faster than his skill set could adapt. The final blow to Roy Hibbert's career wasn't that he suddenly became unplayable, it was that his role shrank faster than his skill set could adapt. Once Indiana could no longer build its defense entirely around him, Hibbert went from being a system player to just another center trying to fit elsewhere, and that's where things unraveled. His value was always tied to context. Take him out of the environment that maximized his strengths and the margins became unforgiving. When he left Indiana, there was no longer a scheme designed to protect him. Other teams needed centers who could switch, sprint, space the floor, or at least threaten defenses in multiple ways. Hibbert didn't offer those options. His offensive game remained traditional, and his defensive strengths depended heavily on positioning and team discipline. Without full buy-in, those strengths faded into the background. At that point, minutes became unstable. His role shifted from consistent starter to situational piece. A bad matchup could erase him for entire stretches. Coaches stopped building around him and started working around him. That's usually the beginning of the end for a center in a league that values flexibility above all else. What followed wasn't a dramatic collapse, but a rapid decrease in opportunity. Less time on the floor meant fewer chances to regain confidence. Fewer reps meant less forgiveness when mistakes happened. And once a player falls out of clear rotation, it becomes increasingly difficult to fight back, especially without a defining skill that fits the current era. Hibbert didn't forget how to play basketball. The league simply stopped valuing the type of player he was built to be. In just a few seasons, he went from anchoring elite playoff defenses to struggling with consistent roles, and a shift that felt sudden but reflected a deeper change in how the game was played. His growth didn't stall because he stopped working or stopped caring. It stalled because his game no longer had room to breathe. And once the league decides a role is outdated, time moves fast, whether the player is ready for it or not. All in all, like mentioned, Roy Hibbert's career didn't collapse because he forgot how to play. It ended because the league stopped needing what he was built to provide. For a few years, he was perfect for the NBA. Size, discipline, rim protection, and structure. He anchored playoff defenses and played a key role in real contending teams. That part of his story matters, but once the league shifted toward speed, spacing, and flexibility, Hibbert's margins disappeared fast. His value was always connected to a system, and when that system became outdated, there was nowhere left for his game to settle. He didn't regress, he got overtaken by change. Hibbert's story is a reminder of how quickly basketball evolves and how little control players sometimes have over that evolution. Time matters, fit matters, and in the NBA, even being very good isn't always good enough if the game moves in a different direction. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.